Hi everybody, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. My name's Naomi Ilagoswa and I am the Integration and Inclusion Manager for the Growth Company and InWorkGM. I'm just going to start off by giving you a small introduction for today. So InWorkGM is an alliance partnership between Indius and the Growth Company. It also includes CTech Plus, who provides specialist health and disability support, and Pathway CIC, who offer wellbeing services. InWorkGM deliver Working Well, the work and health programme, on behalf of the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, GMCA. Throughout the programme we deliver, our aim is to support Greater Manchester residents with health conditions and disabilities to find sustainable employment. 8.1 million working age people in the UK have a disability. The Disability Confidence Scheme supports employers to make the most of the talents disabled people can bring to your workplace. As disability confident leaders, our aim is to support more organisations to reap the benefit of inclusive recruitment practices. We recognise that we are in uncertain times and it's challenging for many businesses. That said, we've seen some real positives emerge, particularly around flexible and agile working. And we'd like to see these continue when we return to the new normal, whatever that may look like. Today, you'll have a chance to hear from some great speakers, and there'll be also a chance to ask questions at the end. Firstly, I'm going to hand over to actor Cherylee Houston to speak about her experiences. So over to you, Cherylee.
Hello everybody, I'm Cherylee Houston. I've been in Coronation Street for 11 years now, which is very exciting for me. When I started out, I'm in my 40s now, and when I started out, there was nobody like me on television, and there was no role models, which I think that's kind of where this whole thing is really. It's quite a catch-22 of how disabled people aren't seen, therefore not thought of, and therefore not employed, whereas actually we bring a great richness to the workforce, as well as a different way, different attitudes of looking at things, which then can actually open the concept and the minds of your team to approach things in a different way. I think that's what I want to start with. I was looking at my career and thinking, why in my industry is it important that disabled people are on television? And I think that's because stories are a really important way to make change. So that's something I've been campaigning for a lot, is to increase the number of disabled people on television. When I started out, I think there was about 1 or 2. Currently, last year the statistics were 3.2, I think, on ITV, and most of that was myself and the guy on Emmerdale, because it was on so many times a week. But statistically, 19% of the population has a disability. So if you look at it that way, if you look at your teams, then you're kind of nearly missing out on 20% of brains in the room if you can't get people in. What was so exciting, I think, through this terrible time, and it's taken the worst thing to bring out access in a different way, but suddenly we've all managed to move our mindsets into working in a very different way, which hopefully is something that people really embrace when they go back, and that way you can then connect with many more people who can enrich your business and your work practices. So statistically in my industry, it's around 3%, when really we're 19% of the population, and in film it's less than 1%. So I was thinking it's quite useful to look at what your statistics are in your industry, as well as what your statistics are in your workplace, because that might start making you go, oh, okay, there might be some readjustments we could do here. Moving on from that, how do you then address that? And I think it's about maintaining a solution-focused approach, because with disability, it's a minefield. There's terminology, and some people everybody likes to be called something different. So if you stay solution focused and approach everything as a conversation, take the onus off your shoulders. It is not your responsibility to get this right. Work together to find a solution, because I think that way that takes the responsibility of the disabled person, and it also takes the responsibility of the employer. It goes, let's have a conversation together. For example, I always love this anecdote of Barclays were employing. They'd interviewed everybody and found this guy who was fantastic for the position, quite a high up position. He was a small gentleman. So the team were going, how are we going to get him in the lift? The lift buttons are quite high. And they spent, I think it was over £10,000 moving the lift buttons down. Day one, the guy came in with a stick in his hand because he's been in a lift before. So he had his solutions. So the thing is, it's remembering that actually the disabled person has lived all this. We've got those experiences. So actually, all your responsibility is to start the conversation and go, okay, how can we approach this? How can we make this more accessible for you to be involved? One of my favourite articles of the last few months has been by Francis Ryan in The Guardian, going, suddenly, from being housebound, the world has opened up to me because tours are coming, virtual conversations, everything has stopped being outside, and we found different ways to communicate, and that's something you can really embrace, because it means that actually you might then, so say you're looking at candidates for a job, you might suddenly realise that out of the 10, 2 of those people would never have been able to get to your offices, but out of those 2 people might be one of the best people to do the job you're doing. So I think it's that going, okay, we can open our mindsets a little bit more now, and it might be an easy way of doing things, because Zoom doesn't have ramps. It makes it a lot easier to get into the room, so that gets rid of all the problems in the building for a start. And then those can be the conversations you can then look at to see how you can find those solutions. So I think a really good thing in your head to have is solution-focused approach. And I think a way of looking at as well, particularly because at the moment you're going to be having COVID guidelines, you're going to be looking at how to address things in your workplace. Now, something we always say is if you put disability on the agenda of any work meeting, as long as that's on the agenda, then you're thinking about access. Things start to become natural. If you stop making disability an add-on, then it stops being perceived as a problem. It stops being something that actually costs a lot more to implement later because it's not being part of the thought process. Corrie did that to me when I started Coronation Street. Before I started, I went in, looked around the building, and we found out what we could make more accessible. We did the same when we moved to a new building at Sulphur Quays, and what was exciting about those changes was that the accessible route all the way around the street and the electronic doors suddenly made a massive difference for older members of cast, people carrying things. It made a difference for people with trolleys, moving the dollies, moving the cameras. So actually, I think we sort of perceive, oh, we've got to do all that for that one disabled person's coming in. No, actually what that does is change the mindset, and it also enables it much more for everybody else. So I think have a look at what access you've learnt during COVID, how you've done your business practices differently, how that has made things accessible in a different way. So yeah, it's exciting. I think we're at a time where we can go, okay, let's put this on the agenda now. Let's just start moving forwards and put things on the agenda. I'm aware now I've talked for 9 minutes, I think. Thank you very much. I will see everybody at the end for the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Cherylee. That was brilliant. Next, I am going to hand over to Peter Sheath, who is the Registered Manager at Sanctum Healthcare, who's going to talk to you about supporting employees with addiction. So I'm just going to work out how I invite him on stage. Bear with me. Okay, over to you, Peter. Thank you very much.
Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. I can.
Okay.
Yeah, so hopefully everyone else can. Let's.
Okay. Yeah, I'm this camera on this laptop is keyboard, so it's kind of looking up my nose, so it's a bit embarrassing, but there we go. I'm registered manager with an organisation called Sanctum Healthcare, which is in the private mental health substance misuse field, and we deal with people who can pay for their treatment. But I worked for a lot of years in various settings with addiction and mental health. And one of the, I'm just sort of trying to pick on some of the themes that Cherylee was saying earlier. And it's about one of my things is the assumptions that we make about people just because they've got an alcohol or a drug problem, that somehow that makes them helpless and they can't make their own decisions. So we start treating them from a position of helplessness rather than looking at what they've got, you know, like, rather than looking at what's strong. We kind of take a position of what's wrong. You know, we've got to find out what's wrong with you before we can start putting it right and offering you opportunities, guidance, and all the things that people need to create this thing we call recovery. And the other thing that comes kind of on the radar when people are looking to make a break from using drugs or using alcohol is that the past always seems to catch them up as well. So you've got things like what you was doing now, which is you might be doing all sorts of things that don't exactly fit in with society. But then 10 years down the line, you might still find yourself judged for what you was doing 10 years ago. And a lot of that just precludes you from employment, opportunities, going to college. I'm a person in recovery myself, and you know, I've not used drugs or alcohol for 20 years, but I can still find myself judged on stuff that I was doing over 20 years ago, and opportunities, doors closing for me that really should be opening for me, but you know, it's sort of, people judge my present self and my, you know, my present ability on how I was 20 years ago. So I can find myself applying for things, and things like my history of offending might come up, the fact that I was a drug addict many years ago, you know, some of the things I did in that addiction might come up. And, you know, it's almost like you're constantly trying to reconcile what you was doing many, many years ago to create an opportunity for yourself right now. And an example for that is that I can't travel to a lot of the countries people just naturally start to make an assumption that I can go to. You know, I can't go to America because this system doesn't allow me to travel. So I get people asking me to go over there and do a talk on the conference circuit, and they want me to add value to what they're doing over in America because I'm a very experienced person. But their laws and regulations won't allow me to travel to America. And so, you know, a person that now I'm a registered manager in a responsible position, and it's many, many years since I've done anything, but yet I still get judged on how I was 20 years ago. And I think that for the people I work with, these are all major obstacles. You know, it's sort of, I've stopped using drugs. I want to get my life back together. I want to go to college. I want to get a job. And all them things are what we call social recovery capital. But it may well be that what you was doing a few years ago might have all sorts of, you might have to jump through all sorts of obstacles to get to where you want to be. And a lot of people will give up. And a lot of prospective employees or prospective college offers might be taken away because of assumptions that people make about people. I think there's also this, I was talking to a social worker not that long ago, and it's kind of this adage that once an addict, always an addict. And I just think that that's something that seems to be endemic in society, that, you know, you can't move on from your addiction problems, whereas lots and lots of people do move on from addiction problems. I was having a conversation not 10 minutes ago, and I would say that 80% of the people that... Hello?
I'm sorry, sir.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, keep going, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry.
percent of the people that I was involved with, I mean, I used to use drugs with, and I used to drink with, and now in recovery of one sort of another, and are back in employment, and I've helped them along that way. But I guess that a lot of the time, you know, people would give up if they didn't have that support, that almost constant support of, you know, like, let's sort of look at another avenue. Let's not get disheartened here. Let's kind of, you know, regather and regroup. But a lot of people do fall by the wayside and, you know, end up in a much darker place than what they was maybe when they was using drugs prior to getting into recovery. I just think that as prospective employers, that people need to, you know, like have a little bit more flexibility and adaptability around offering. I know there is a lot of employers out there that do that, but I think that maybe employers should look at people more on face value and what they're doing right now, and not necessarily make judgments on a person from what they was doing in the past. I think maybe I've sort of you know, I guess people will know what I'm saying, that, you know, people make judgments on people's past that have a real impact on where people want to go. And I think we've got to try and find ways and means around that. And it's a big ask because it involves all of society. And also look for people's strengths, not what's strong rather than what's wrong with people. And that's about it. Thank you.
Very much. I'm going to invite our next speaker, Mark Cottam, to the stage. Just bear with me. This is all very new technology for me. I'm learning as we go. So, thank you very much. That was brilliant to hear your experiences. Next, we're going to hear from Mark Cottam, who's the Senior Sustainability Advisor from Laing O'Rourke, who will share his experiences on how diversity has worked for them as an organisation. So, over to you, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I work for a large construction and engineering company. We're across the whole country. I work on large construction projects. I like what Cherylee was saying a minute ago. Me and Cherylee bumped into each other at one of the times where we could actually get together in person at a diversity confidence talk. And I invited Cherylee to come to our Manchester Airport construction site because we had a lift put. It was quite a while before that, and it was put in for somebody who was pregnant at the time. But when I invited Cherylee, I told all the project team that we've got Cherylee coming to site, we've got a lift, we've got disabled toilets, we've got all that. The sheer panic of people there, you know, can we have somebody who's in a wheelchair on our site? Luckily, the visit went really well. But I think it was very much about really how you can change, you know, that mindset, that perspective of what can be achieved. But also, I think it was like Cherylee was saying earlier, it was that you make one thing accessible for one group of people, you make it accessible for a lot of different people. That lift was put in predominantly because there was a lady who was pregnant at the time, but also then it was used for somebody who had back problems, somebody who had a knee operation. It allowed them to carry on working because we'd have that one facility put in that was then made accessible for a wider group of people. I think for me, it's not just about, you know, one-off initiatives and, you know, having policies in place. I think it's got to be about changing the mindset of everybody in your organisation, or as many people as we can. I want to show you two ways I think we've done this within our organisation at Laing O'Rourke. One is around mental health awareness. I think a few years ago it was seen, and we looked at the stats that were coming out around mental health within construction. And I know we're not the only company to, you know, do a lot around. I think the whole industry's looked at mental health. But I think we really grabbed hold of it. We trained people to be mental health champions and mental health first aiders. We started discussion groups around mental health. I think that started a conversation about it's okay to talk, it's all right to talk about any of your mental health or hidden disabilities that people have. I think it started opening the doors to other avenues around disability. You know, people started having discussion groups and going, well, actually, I've got some problems with my knees and I can't lift the same, you know, anymore. And where they wouldn't have had that conversation before, or they would have gone to a point where they physically can't work anymore, measures were able to be put in place. It got people to start thinking about what was possible instead of what was barriers to people working in employment. I think an example of that was at Manchester Airport, and we had one of our it's a huge construction site. It was, you know, I think there was something like 1,500 people working on there. And one of our subcontractors came to us and said, I've got somebody with a hearing impairment. And I know at one time that would have been, oh, we can't have somebody on site, you know, and it's a dangerous construction site, you know, who's got hearing impairment. They didn't say that. They came to the health and safety manager, they sat down and go, how can we find a solution to that? Like Cherylee was saying, you know, having that solution-focused approach, they put the measures in place. It didn't cost us anything extra. It was just changing some of the ways that we do things to make it accessible and safe for that individual to work on our site. I think that is all stuff that's driven nationally. I said, but I think also to really have change, you need that one or two people within your organisation who will bang that door and push on and, you know, really take you along to get you to realise that there needs to be change. And I think for us, there's one lady called Sarah who works on our Metrolink extension to the Trafford line. She persuaded the construction site there to support somebody who had Down syndrome. She got them all together. She got some training in for a group of the workforce there on his barriers and his difficulties. They came up with a plan of how they could manage him, his employment, giving him tasks that was help him and that they could support the project at the same time. I don't think every element of that was perfect. You know, there's lessons to be learned, but I think all of that is about changing people's perspectives. You know, it's not the same now. If I go and ask, can we take somebody who's got a disability? It won't be a flat no. It will be, what can we do to find a solution to help that person, individual, into employment and to work for us? So again, that was just a few examples from my perspective of how we've, you know, sort of embraced it. But I think a takeaway for me is yes, I agree with Cherylee about thinking it's that solution-focused approach, but also we all need to change our perspective of what a disability is and what, you know, be more inclusive. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Okay, let's add our next speaker. So we've got Daniella Kent from Irwin Mitchell. So let me just see if I can get her onto the stage. Just bear with me. 1 second. Okay, just bear with me. I'm just trying to get Daniella onto the stage. So just hang fire for 2 moments, please. Sorry. Having a few issues with the software. It won't let me add that. So just you can hang on 2 moments, please. Sorry about this. on to Tony, just because I can't, for some reason, get Danielle onto the stage. So, Tony, we'll hand over to you if that's okay, and then we'll come back and try and get Daniella on, because for some reason it's not allowing me to add her onto stage. So, Tony Hassall is from Breakthrough UK, which is an organisation led by disabled people which supports other disabled people to live and work independently. So we're just bearing with us. Tony, we should be joining us shortly.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Tony. I'll hand over to you.
Okay, thank you. So, as mentioned, I am from UK. We are a disabled persons organisation. Majority of our staff have declared or identify as disabled. So we're in a different position to many employers because we are living this experience firsthand. We recruit actively from the population of disabled people because we are all about the lived experience and using that to support other disabled people. And certainly the current situation has given us a lot of lived experience. So I will be quite open and honest in terms of how we've dealt with the enforced period of working from home and the benefits of doing that. And also I will kind of alert you to some of the things as an employer you probably need to think about when it comes to working from home and agile policies, particularly around disabled people, but also for the wider population. We didn't get things right, I will be quite honest with you, from day one. I think it is very hard when you are thrown into a situation where suddenly you have to all work from home to get things 100% right for every single employee. But we have got a lot of learning, so happy to share this with you. So we relocated to working from home a week before the official lockdown. We did a lot of training with our staff around new technology, things that they hadn't necessarily used before, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, the ever-present Outlook and email, and also kind of enhancements to how we could use our WhatsApp groups to keep in contact. And it was a lot of information for our staff all at once. And people do learn at different rates, and people have different access requirements with all those bits of tech. So we know that it was a reactive process at that point. We needed to get people up to speed as quickly as we could, so they could then be confident working from home. And we're still 9-10 weeks in now, and I'll be open and honest, we are still learning. As you can see from my kind of setup here, finding the right place for a Zoom call is not easy for anyone. The technology itself, the kind of access to the webcams, if we have people with a hearing impairment who need to lip read, Zoom is great, but also the speed of people's internet can impair that. So there's a lot of learning that we've had around the tech. We realized quite early on that Microsoft Teams, which we thought would be our go-to piece of kit going forward, wasn't fit for purpose for everybody. And there was confusion around where people should be sharing documents and collaborating. So we are in the process of still learning and redesigning our strategy for new technology. But a big part of what we do, obviously, is supporting disabled people in the community. Hi, am I back? I think
We can still see you and hear you.
You can still see me.
You.
Good. Apologies that you can still see me. So like I said, we didn't get everything right firsthand, and it's taken us a while to kind of come up with a strategy of kind of the tech that we need to use where and when. We've had to redesign all our processes because we are supporting people in the community, but we can't physically go out and meet people. So we've had to redesign our programs so that we can deliver those over Zoom or over phone calls, conference calls, bearing in mind, obviously, not all of our clients are able to be included on some of these. Some people are digitally excluded from our processes. So we've had to also design more one-to-one support over the phone for some people. But the working from home element, which is obviously what I want to talk about today, while it does have its benefits, I do feel that as an organisation, we have come together a lot more as a team. People have sought solace in each other. We do communicate a lot more, which is all very positive. But also on the other side of it, from a cultural angle from an employer, we do lose a little bit of the organizational culture in that we're not kind of water cooler moments or coming together as a wider team. So one thing I will say on the working from home element is, you know, from an employer point of view, it is sometimes difficult to kind of get everybody together into one place. I think my internet is going again. This is not ideal, I'm sorry. But this is a perfect example of
we can be patient. If you come in and out, don't worry. We all this new technology and working from home is, you know, has its bumps in the road, should we say? We can still, yeah, we can.
I don't know if you can still see me, but I can still hear you. Okay, so yeah, in terms of the positives of working from home, I do think it has brought the organisation together. We've responded very quickly.
Okay, I think we may have lost Tony for a moment. He may come back. This was always my worry for today, that it was all gonna go well until technology let us down. So we will see if Tony joins us to finish what he was saying. But I just wanted, and also I'm still going to try and get Daniella when I can. If anybody has any questions that they want to ask, if you can put them in the questions tab, that would be really great, and then I can ask them to our speakers. I'll see if we can get Tony back, but if not, then I'll go over to the questions and answers, and I'll start to invite everyone who's spoken to the stage. So I'll just give Tony a couple of minutes, give you a chance to think of some questions, and hopefully we'll get everybody back on with us. So just bear with me. I'm going to bring everyone else back to the stage. Now, so it's all fun and games this morning. So I'm going to be adding Mark and everybody back to the stage. Okay, at the moment it doesn't want to let me invite Cherylee to the stage, so just bear with me on that. But if anybody's got any questions for either Peter or Mark, and hopefully we'll get Tony back, if you could either put them in the chat or the questions, that would be great. So we've had a comment about how we can raise awareness for recruiting managers on how they can use the recruitment guidelines. So how do you think we could be best placed to kind of raise awareness with recruiting managers on how they can be more flexible and agile in their approach to recruitment?
I think it's, you want me to answer? I think it is. It's about giving them an understanding of, you know, what inclusion is. You know, I think a lot of them don't really fully understand, you know, about inclusion, and don't really fully understand about the barriers that people face. I think recently we had I did an inclusive recruitment event. Again, that was hosted by the Growth Company, where he was kind enough to let us use the space there. And that was about really giving, you know, recruiting managers and you know, an understanding of different sorts of barriers that people face, and really challenge their perceptions of what is possible and what's not possible. And I think it's about having them constant conversations and trying to get them to understand that, you know, this is not barriers that people face. It's we put the barriers in the place, you know, and it's how we can just make it as easy as possible for everybody to have opportunities.
Okay, great. Peter, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think that the last gentleman's just answered more or less how I would have answered it. I think it's just having an awareness that, you know, don't judge people on their past, judge them. Well, no, don't judge them at all. Just sort of make decisions based on what's in front of you, and what they're bringing to the table right now, not what they was doing 20 years ago. And also, although we've got to take into account the offending behaviours, and that does kind of colour our judgment around people, but it's not necessarily, it shouldn't be the be all and end all that precludes people from the positions that we're offering. So it's just making a decision more based on now rather than what was.
Great, thank you. Sorry, Cherylee, did you want to say something there?
Yeah, exactly. Totally agree with everybody. I think what might be useful to think about is your marketing strategy when advertising jobs. Certain small little things, even like putting a wheelchair symbol and say that your offices are accessible, makes the disabled community know that you're welcome. Do you know what I mean? So it's sort of maybe looking at maybe look at where you advertise is the local disabled groups. There's quite a few big disabled groups in Manchester you could connect with. Greater Manchester Coalition of Disabled People, Key One, Breakthrough UK are also in Manchester. So go and have a conversation with them about where would you find disabled employees. Also, both universities have got a disability sector, so go and have a chat there, just so you can sort of start to look in other places, because it is a two-way conversation. Disabled people aren't used to being welcome, so therefore it's almost like you need to go just a little extra step first to start getting people hooked in.
Brilliant, thank you. Tony, we're really sorry you got
No, it's okay.
Is there anything you wanted to finish on?
Yeah, my point really was about the agile working side of it. So working from home is fantastic. It is open, it's removed a lot of barriers for our staff and for our clients, and we've embraced a new way of working. It does need to be taken as part of a wider agile policy, though. I think there still needs to be a choice, because it's not for everybody, and certainly not full time for everybody, because you lose the boundaries between work and home. And isolation. We do a lot of work at Breakthrough, encouraging people to come out into the community. At the moment, we're having to tell them to stay in, which is the opposite of our usual message. So when it comes to taking the best of this period of lockdown and what we learned and what has really enabled disabled people to work more efficiently during this period, we also need to take the best of the previous world and have that combination of agile, kind of you work from home when it suits, not because that's a company policy necessarily, because we still need the social interaction. We still need that commute to work, as horrendous as it can be sometimes. That is a way of getting into the mindset for work or for decoupling at the end of the day. So it is about supporting each other through both elements. And in terms of the recruitment good practice, as Cherylee mentioned, there are organisations out there who have got a wealth of knowledge on the subject. We work through the lived experience of our clients. We empower our clients to talk confidently to potential employers. But a lot of employers don't necessarily look in the right places to find those clients. So by all means, come to us. We can link you up with people who are actively looking for work, as many other organisations who are here today can. And yeah, there is an untapped workforce. I think after lockdown, it may become more difficult because there may be a lot more people, a lot more skilled people coming out of work through this period who will be in the job market as well. So it's really about just tapping into the resources and kind of using the knowledge of organisations that are out there.
Thank you very much. Peter, I think you wanted to add something.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a little bit about neurodiversity. I think that we live in a very neurotypical world, and we kind of make decisions based on neurotypicality that often excludes people that are neurodiverse, i.e. somebody who may be on the autistic Asperger's spectrum, may be really, really competent in some areas, but maybe not so competent in other areas. But people make assumptions about the other areas rather than looking at the areas of competence. And I think sometimes it's about trying to, again, look for the strengths rather than the weaknesses that they bring. Don't make too much assumptions about what they can't do. Make a lot of assumptions about what they can do.
Okay, thank you very much. We've had a question from Louise who says, as a disabled person with a changeable illness, when first going into the workplace, she found it difficult to know exactly what support I needed. What's the best way to educate employers about this scenario so they don't think the employee is being difficult? Would anybody like to answer that? I don't know if Tony, you might be, or Cherylee, would you like to?
Yeah, just to say, I think that's a really useful point for all employers to notice and recognise that actually access is a very changeable thing, and it does depend on the scenario and the situation, and you put a new key element in and access changes again. So it's just about being, okay, you can do the basics, but keep the conversation going. And if you say as an employer, let's keep checking in, then that takes the fear and the responsibility off the person with a disability.
Great, thank you. Tony?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It is about keeping those communication channels open throughout the process. In the application stage, we wouldn't encourage employers, and they shouldn't be asking about reasonable adjustments at that point, because it's not relevant to whether somebody is fit for the job. But certainly when you get to an interview stage, employers should be asking about any reasonable adjustments for the interview. And then when the offer is made, then further conversation. And we would always encourage our clients to kind of have the confidence to discuss, their own requirements, because nobody knows those better than them, with the employer, and be open and honest. An employment support worker will work with both clients and the employer at the first contact, to kind of make sure that both parties have their needs met, because it is a mutual thing. The client, the employee, will have requirements to do the job. The employer will also need always understand necessarily the rules around access to work, or kind of how to work with people. So yes, it's about just keeping communication channels open and honest and transparent.
Great, thank you very much. We don't seem to have any further questions at the moment. If anyone's got any last burning questions, then feel obviously free to put them on the chat or the questions. I hope people have found that useful today. I can only, I really want to thank our speakers. I think they've been great, and I think they've really put it into kind of real life scenarios, and we've had some great perspectives on, what it is like both as a disabled person and as an employer, and how actually, by being more agile and flexible, we can actually, make sure we're tapping into that talent pool that is available. And I think, yes, I know we're in really challenging times, and it is, a daunting world, but I think we can really take the positives that we have started to see in the changes and move those forward into whatever we kind of return to. If anybody would like further information, or would like support in becoming disability confident, as disability confident leaders, we can support you with that, and I can also pass on information, contact details for Breakthrough, etc. So if anybody would like more information, please feel free to get in touch. My email address is in the chat box. But I would just like to really thank our speakers today. I'm sorry for the technical issues and we couldn't get Daniella on, but we'll do another one of these hopefully, and we'll get Daniella to she'll be first in the queue to do our speaking. So again, thank you to our speakers. Hope you've enjoyed it, and thanks for joining us today. Thank you. Bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.